Time. I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV. With us today is Nat Lowell, our friend who comes in and periodically gives us his perspective on things, and they're very good perspectives. So Nat, welcome.
Thank you.
What's
Dan.
on your mind today?
Well, what's the topic? The first thing that we should talk about, since it's Labor Day, the end of the summer, is how'd the summer go?
How'd the summer go?
Great. We didn't have a storm or a pretend storm.
We did have a storm.
We didn't.
What was that on the 4th of July?
Yeah, but we didn't lose people coming here.
That's true.
They
were already
here.
In
other words, yes, they were already here.
And they didn't leave.
Right. Once they're here and they're captivated, and if there's a weather event that's not really causing a whole changeover to happen, like say canceled boats on a Saturday,
if there's an event that isn't predicted far in advance,
right? Yep.
Then we do okay.
Yep. Now, we talked yesterday about what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is an issue that I wrote about in the paper a year ago about the school and the trades being taken away.
What's the issue?
Remember that? The issue is where the money comes from.
Right. Okay.
And it hasn't really ever changed. Right. It's just that now it's more noticed and people talk about it, and more people are not from Nantucket,
right,
that are living here, that are part of our economy and understand where the money comes from, perhaps at times better than the locals. So what I've been trying to do in the last year is, when I have the opportunity to discuss it, whether it's public or privately, is explaining to people, like I talk to a lot of locals by myself and say things like, we're living here pretty cheap.
And you're talking specifically about real estate taxes.
I'm talking about how the bills of the town of Nantucket, now we have to separate payroll being, maybe there's a problem with the payroll system and we got too many employees. That's not what I'm talking about. That's a different issue. All the costs, the town's general fund, about 80% is paid for by people that don't have one kid in the public school. Right. Now, the public school's on the front page of the paper
and
today.
have no say over how the money's spent.
And well, that's a different thing.
But it's true.
I know, but I'm gonna nip that one really fast. Okay, the seasonal resident used to be called the summer person.
Right.
And we used to say summer people back in the day. And being over 50, I sort of remember both sides pretty well.
We're really talking about non-resident taxpayer.
The non-resident taxpayer term is only in the last 10 or 15 years. Seasonal resident.
But that's what they are.
I know. But their rate is cheap, even though it's higher than ours. That is a benefit to both the real estate industry itself, the people. There's always a market for houses here that we can't afford, but they can, because, and one of the main reasons is the tax rate is something they look at as a sort of a part of the cost.
Right.
Okay, and I didn't really have that figured out till this year, because I've already had that confirmed with other real estate people.
That's true.
The other thing is that the fact that the rate has always been low doesn't mean
it's one
of our best assets to keeping people from leaving. Right. Meaning locals, meaning people that live here year-round. Even though the cost of living, when you hear cost to live here, it's really more about buying a house, building a house, or traveling to and from Nantucket. Those are the high expenses. If you live here, and you already own a house in the last, say, 25 years or older, and you don't travel much and kind of like, live here and don't leave much, it's cheap.
I would argue
cheap.
that.
It's not as expensive as the traditional tone of that conversation, is what I'm saying.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So the tax rate is one of our best assets, because it's paying all the bills through a low rate of a lot of people. Okay? The services that we have here, we really don't have the services at other towns. We don't have community trash and all that kind of stuff. So what I've been talking about, I talk to Libby occasionally about this. We talk to Andrew, and we talk to different people about this whole thing about, like, say, brush cutting and some of these things that the public thinks the DPW or somebody else should just be doing automatically. I find that to be a problem, because if we had enough public employees on the payroll to do all these things in a public employee system. It's not like private sector.
Right.
Okay, you can't fix that. All right, you'd have to have 20 more people, more vehicles. It isn't worth it. The private sector, the private
But you can
property.
hire people to do it with town money.
No, what we need to do is have more people doing it on their own. Okay, I take care of my street on one side. There's a lot. It doesn't take much to cut back a few branches on the front of your lot.
That's true too.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just giving
But
you
I'm
a simple thing.
I'm thinking of something even simpler, which is painting the lines on the road.
What makes me laugh is that you know how much money on landscaping is spent that's put in the road right away, yet we can't cut back some branches on our own? Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I mean, look at Hobart Avenue. Look at all these streets, Baxter Road, public roads that have a layout beyond the pavement, which they all do, and you've got all this high-end landscaping that's costing thousands of dollars in the layout, yet we can't cut back some branches on certain roads where there's problems, like Rugged Road. When you get out and you look to your left, you can't see.
Well, many
Just
places.
get out there and
Many
cut
places,
it.
yeah.
It's not that hard, okay? So my sort of reason for bringing this up is because this is something that everybody needs to accept as a fact, even if they don't agree with some of the reasons why. For example, traffic, houses. We're in the house business. And with houses comes cars. The cars are paying the bills on the steamship, and the houses are paying the bills to us. One home generates a lot of jobs. I mean, it's amazing how many people are working in different types of businesses in houses today than they were 35, 40 years ago. When I was a kid, running around with my father, putting on shutters, and
Right.
they didn't even use the word caretake. They didn't even have those words yet.
Now it's property management.
Now it's property management. That's exactly right. Back then, it was just a customer. I mean, he didn't even call it caretaking. So today, jobs are generated from everything that, I hate to say it, that we don't like. But it's only for 2 months a year. Labor Day starts in the middle of August. Cars are streaming off this island somewhere around August 15th, August 18th, depending upon the weekend. And they're leaving. They don't all leave in one weekend. They leave for 2 weeks.
Right.
And by the time Labor Day is over, it's completely flatlined, and it's like everybody's gone in one day. But they really started trickling because I know what's going on at the boat, and you can see it. So we're very lucky. We're getting our bills paid by people that don't cost us anything except aggravation and traffic, and that's about it when you really think about it.
There's another factor in this cheapness. Cheapness.
Okay.
If you know what, which is really what.
I don't mean to
less
say
expensive.
It like that. It's less expensive than in other places.
All right, but it is also, I think, to some degree, accelerated the departure of longtime islanders because they cash out.
Well, the cashing out thing is the value, which is driven by
The tax rate,
No,
in part by the tax rate.
value of the property is driven by there's less of it. There's less land.
But you said a few minutes ago that
Okay.
the tax rate is one of the things people consider when they buy a house.
When somebody
when
a seasonal resident buys a house is what I'm talking about.
I think
The people that live in here already know it.
when anybody buys a house, if you're moving to a different house here, you're going to look
But you already know it. If you're from Greenwich, Connecticut, and you never bought a house on Nantucket, and there's a house for sale on, Wing Spread Way or Shimo, the second thing you look at is the tax rate before you look at the bottom line. We already know the tax rates. Well, we just expect it to stay that way because that's what we have.
Yeah, but
So
we
it's two
benefit
different
from
things.
we benefit from it in a lot of ways, and one of them is the property values. It's affected by
Property
other
value
things.
is high because there's no land.
That's part of it.
And the other reason is, and I've said this on one of my other shows with you, 1980, when Nantucket became accessible year-round and from Hyannis, is when the uptick in property value started because you couldn't get here. Didn't matter. I mean, we've always had luxury homes. I mean, we had luxury homes before cars, but they were worth nothing. You couldn't get here. It took you all summer to get here and all summer to leave. You look at the pictures down at the boat. It isn't hard to figure out. But now, access is seamless for the most part. I don't want to say seamless, but for today's standards, it's pretty easy. But it's hard and easy, meaning the cost to get here is expensive, but you can get here in a day, all right, from far away. the value has ticked up since 1980, and with the emergence of the fast ferries, the emergence of, I would call it the middle class, I guess I would say successful. There's another segment of the population. I don't want to say new money. That's not really it. That was the original trophy home thing with the new money. I would call it, there's been a lot of people buying houses here that aren't rich, but they can afford it.
Right.
There's a difference between being rich and just being able to afford it. It's not like they're buying it with cash.
Right.
So that's the new thing. We talked about that with the Appleton Road thing that was in the paper. I think it was in June or May. So, I mean, in my perspective, going through the whole limiting car issue and the steamship, New Bedford, getting out of Hyannis, that seems like 100 years ago. And that was only 14 years ago.
Right.
And I'm telling you, if that ever tried to happen again, it would be rejected in 2 seconds, because now enough of the population over the last 12 to 14 years has figured out on their own, without actually thinking about it, where the money comes from. It's coming from everything we say we don't like. You know, can you shoot a tourist, stickers, you know, all that stuff. The traffic, I mean, it's always going to be about traffic, but the traffic is the same every year. Now, this summer it was kind of chilly. Less people
but
were
there were
going
also
to the
more
beach.
cars came over.
Yeah, but it's only a few, and there's
But
less.
a few can make a big difference.
Dan, you know what? Those one-way cars, I'd rather have more of them and less excursions, and more people having a car off island or renting a car, because the car that comes once is paying.
Oh, sure.
Subsidizing everything else.
That's a different issue.
I'm just saying. It's important that people understand that. Those are the box seats. We're in the bleachers. In fact, we're on the Citgo sign with our prices. You like that, didn't you? So remember they used to sit on the signs? They probably don't do that anymore in Fenway. But anyway...